your way, and hesitate.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Fox 12 Weather Podcast. Well, I haven't been here in a while, but this is episode 86. I'm meteorologist Jeff Forgeron, joined by Camilla Ortiz. Hey Camilla.
Hello.
Meteorologist Katie Suniga. Hey Katie.
Good morning.
Chief meteorologist, Mark Nelson. Hey Mark.
Welcome back, Jeffy.
And I just want to make mention that today is Friday, January 26th, in case you're watching a little bit later on. Hey guys, it's been a while.
It's been a minute.
Yes.
Who
Where
is
have you
this
been?
guy? Where'd Jeff go?
What's all
The
this?
bearded wonder.
For the
Bradley
record,
Cooper?
I went a stretch from November 28th until just the day before I came back. No shave. I cleaned it up though when I came back though. So
Yeah, it looks
yeah,
You
good.
look like Grizzly Adams.
yeah, a lot of people have been commenting. Somebody said Beardgate, called it
Beardgate.
Beardgate in the newsroom. So enough of this. Yes, I've been on paternity leave for a couple of months. My wife gave birth to our daughter, Ellie Rose Forgeron, back on November 30th. It's been quite the ride. We are so thrilled to be parents, though, and it's just been a joy to watch her grow in the past 2 months. It's crazy how fast she's grown and changed, and her personality is developing, and it's fun being a parent. Katie, you
It is.
understand. Mark, you understand. Camilla, maybe someday.
Maybe someday.
Maybe.
But it's great to be back with you guys, and it was weird not covering the wild weather that we just went through,
Yeah.
which we're going to do a full recap of that in this
Oh,
podcast.
Jeff, wait. You covered it. You were texting me regularly. Some would say constantly. Not actually constantly,
Yeah.
but I guess regularly. So you
on
were
a regular
there.
basis.
You were
Uh-huh.
covering it mentally. We know.
Yeah.
Don't pretend like you were just cloistered up on the hill.
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
somebody messaged me and was like, I bet Jeff is just dying not being there with you guys. I'm like, oh no, he's not here.
He's
but
looking at the
here.
models every
Yeah.
day.
you know
Oh
what
my
was
gosh.
nice? Doing diaper changes in the middle of the night, I could see the 6Z model runs come in. So I
Sweet.
literally was not missing anything.
Oh my gosh.
Really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was weird not actually
6Z.
covering the weather. I was getting a lot bit of FOMO. And
You can't say that without. There's some people older like me that are listening or watching to our podcast.
That's right.
FOMO. FOMO.
fear of missing out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
I only learned that like 6 months ago.
Yeah, it took me a little
Can
bit
I
to
be
learn.
honest? I didn't even know what it meant.
Katie,
I had
yes, you
no
did.
idea. No, I
What?
did not. I've never heard that before.
Oh
You have young
my
kids.
gosh.
I've never heard it.
You know what though? They're a whole. I mean, they're so young that it's almost like they're probably coming up with an entire different,
True.
Right.
slew of abbreviations.
There have been a few things that my 16-year-old, I'll say something. He's like, Mom, that was like 5 years ago.
Oh
Like,
no.
Hmm.
oh.
Well, okay, so well done to you guys, by the way. That was crazy. And
Thank you.
What a
Thanks.
long stretch.
Yeah.
So I hope you have recovered, at least physically, if not mentally as well, because I know how taxing it can be, especially for a chief that has to write a weather blog every day
boy.
on top of all the rigors
Typing it
of
up.
news.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, let's talk about what we're going to be going over. We're going to be talking about, of course, the recap of what we've gone through in the month of January. I'm probably going to let you guys take a hold of that part of the forecast. I'll chime in here and there. We have some warm weather ahead, especially for this time of year, and quite a bit of rainfall that we're expecting, on top of what has been a very wet January. So we'll go into those numbers. Then we'll take a look at the long range. We'll get a glimpse into February. It does look like we're going to be dipping back into a cooler pattern, and we'll see if there's any chance that some wintry mischief may be heading back to the lowlands west of the Cascades.
Ooh, I haven't heard that one for a long time. That's Jeff's signature phrase.
Yeah, it's a Jeff term.
It
Wintry
was
mischief.
my band name in middle school, so
Are you serious?
Wintry mischief and the atmospheric rivers.
no, I only played the recorder.
Yeah, recorder.
Yes.
Okay.
It's a recorder.
I didn't play much of it. Anyways, and then the Cascadia Quake anniversary. We'll go over that. Mark gets really excited about those things, especially
yeah.
when you bring up the possibility of Mount Hood erupting. That's an inside joke.
Mm.
Well, but it's similar. Well, Mount Hood erupting would be maybe less damaging. Well, we know far less damaging.
I don't think it would be explosive. It'd probably be like an ooze.
No.
Oozing event. No? All right.
Yeah. I don't know.
Let's talk about January. Mark, why don't you take this away? Because
I can do this.
I
Oh,
wasn't
Katie,
even here.
wait, I'm going to give it to Katie because you love, we can talk about the number that we're probably going to talk about. So, Katie, what do you see?
Which number are you talking about? The
You know,
coldest
your spreadsheet. Come on.
Oh,
The
yes.
spreadsheet.
My spreadsheets. Amazing. I love spreadsheets. Well, I mean, now I feel a little pressure because I don't know what Mark wants me to say. But so one thing that I want to point out is that temperature on the 21st and the 23rd, that was at what, like 2:00 in the morning? And then we dropped into the teens, and we were in the teens most
You mean the
of
13th?
the days.
Saturday, the
13th and the
13th.
14th.
Yeah.
We're at 21. So
Oh, I'm sorry, the 21 and the 23. Yes, I'm sorry.
Yep. That high was overnight in the early morning hours. And I know very well because on the 14th, I was out in that 15-degree weather reporting that day. So it was just absolutely frigid. And the record was 11 degrees for the coldest. So we missed it by 4 degrees, but we were pretty close there. With that, and then the spreadsheet we've been watching that until we have those 4 days. If you're listening and not watching, we had 4 days that we were below freezing. But Mark and I have a different way. We were kind of not. I don't want to say we were having a discussion about 4 or 5 days because we weren't arguing, but we were just like it was 4 days. It was 5 days. So it was 4 calendar days, but hour wise, it was 5 days, right?
Right. So it was 120 something hours, I think, below freezing.
Yeah. But when I brought this up and showed it on air, it said 5 days below freezing, the 14th to the 17th. And I was like, we made it.
And guys,
before.
Let me tell you, Katie mentioned that in her very nice way, but you could tell it irritated her. Like somebody put 5 days on there. It was me. And because I meant like it was 120 hours. So I said, oh, go ahead and change it back. And it's like, I could tell that it was just like really bothered her. So we're back to 4 days. So now the graphic is now correct.
Yes,
Everybody's
or you
happy.
need to change it to 5 days, quote, however many hours. It needs to be one or the other.
Yeah.
Because it was confusing. I probably had a confused look on air when I was like, well, that doesn't add up, right?
Well, look at those 50s.
Yeah.
I mean, the last few days.
So we might make up for this. Yeah. A little bit.
Using Katie's spreadsheet, I did plug in the 7-day forecast yesterday. And if our 7-day forecast from yesterday was correct, we'd end up just like 3/4 of a degree below normal. So it's going to be very close. Wow. Very close. Whoops. Okay. There we go. I guess that was all to say about that one, right, Katie?
Yeah.
It's been warm, then cold, then warm.
Yep. Very cold.
In my 5 years here, that was the coldest stretch that I've experienced. It was incredible. This has been, I think the way I described it on Good Day Oregon this morning, I think everybody will remember January 2024 for the snow, the ice, the wind, the down trees, the power outages. Yeah. But a sub-headline has been how wet it's been. I mean, we've already, through the 25th, we picked up over 7.5 inches at PDX, and we have plenty of rain still coming in the final 6 days left this month. So I think Mark says it all in this graphic here. We're probably not going to crack the top 5. That'd be pretty difficult to do.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
See, and this is what happened. This would happen in December. Remember, everybody was like, oh my gosh, it's so wet, because we were way up in the numbers. And then we looked, and the wettest December was like 15 inches. And we ended up in like spot 15, even though we had a ton of rain.
You know what? I'll backtrack here. You're right. Now that I'm looking at 1950, if we were to pick up over 2.5 inches of rain, we'd be right around there. You know,
we could be in the top 5. In fact, here's the top.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think we were like sitting at 17th last time I looked. Yeah.
And I know a lot of you are not watching, you're listening. The wettest January is 12.83 inches in 1953.
Juicy.
About a foot of rain.
So we would need to get basically 10 plus inches to crack the top 5 there.
Right. Wettest since 2006. Camilla, you had that on the graphic, right?
Yeah.
Oh, there it is at the top. Could be Portland's wettest in almost 2 decades. So it's going to be our wettest. Oh, no, it is our wet. No, it soon will be our wettest since 2006.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so we're at 7.5, and we need to get to just a little more than 10 to be in the top 5.
Right.
Folks, this is what we do. We stare at numbers like this all day long, and we play out all the scenarios and what ifs. What if we get 2.5 inches of rain? That's what we do.
We'll be looking at something like, oh, if we get this, then that. And if we get this, then that.
Yeah. And then sidebar, December was also wetter than average.
Right.
So that's two, been a
Wet El Nino
winter
so far.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So far, it's not dry and mild. It's wet and mild so far. Except for, look at that. I love this graphic. I don't use it on TV all the time, but when I want to show a specific kind of, what we're looking at here, folks, is the one little bar. There are 30 different bars across the screen. You see the average highs in red, the average low in Portland is in blue, and each bar is a day. So, kind of moves up and down. Closer together, probably cloudy days, temperature doesn't move much. Spread apart, either there was a big change in the air mass or might have been sunny, so it got cool at night and warm during the day. But you see the big dip in Portland. Look how off the chart it goes. Those 4 days below freezing.
The Big Dipper.
Yeah.
Right?
Although, you know what's interesting? Yeah. And then it comes back above normal. It's like we're right back where we were. The last 3 days, lows in the 40s, highs in the 50s, well above average. But Salem, compare this. So look at the dip there in Portland. Look how it takes a while to come back. But look at Salem. It came back after it was really a 4-day event in Salem for cold.
Being so close in proximity to that opening of the Cascades makes a world of a difference because it just keeps oozing out that cold air. So,
which segues into now, Jeff, I don't remember if you got a chance to listen to our podcast last week. I'm sure each week you were just waiting for that to drop into your podcast feed. But we did briefly discuss last Friday the event, the whole cold weather event. We all looked kind of, well, I'm sure
tired.
Ladies looked great, but
where we going?
Backpedaling. But we all look kind of tired. We were all toast, right? We all agree.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. We were, it was a little low energy, but I'm sure the content was still great.
It was. So I think we can reflect a little more today. I wrote up a nice long recap. So I got a few graphics here just to kind of go over. So is that okay if we go over what?
Oh, yeah.
A little more?
Yeah.
Relive the glories of the Big Cold Spell of 2024. So remember, this graphic is from the 3rd, as I recall. So this is 9 days out. This is a graphic we use on TV.
That.
And remember, at one point, models were showing that upper level trough coming straight out of the Northwest
Super
Territory,
low.
straight down over the top of us. I mean, like a historic Arctic blast encompassing the whole Pacific Northwest.
Look at that.
And in the end, oops. Can you see that? Is that hidden at the bottom? That's not. Let's skip that one.
We can
I don't
see
like
it.
that one. Yeah, but I don't like it.
All right.
Oh, well, okay. I guess my point on this one was, so notice the date. This was generated the 3rd. So this is only 2 days after the New Year. And I was thinking just yesterday, like, where did January go? How is it possible January is about to finish up? Well, we started seeing this on our maps 2 days after the New Year. That's why. So all the lead up to it, and then 8 days of it. And then all of a sudden, we've got a week left in the month. So, but anyway, this was a European text output from a graphic we created at KPTV. This is on the 3rd. And remember, all the way we could see, this was on a Wednesday, we could see that the following Thursday, at this point, it was thinking Thursday we'd have onshore flow and cold on the, the 11th? And maybe we get some light snow. And then Friday was the big Arctic blast day with the wind coming in. Wow. In the end, that's more or less what happened. So I was just going to say that this is one of the few times that we were able to say, a week ahead of time that something was up. Even we were talking about this on air. So, well, I guess we were because we had this graphic, but it was very clear, excuse me, that something was up like 9 days out.
Do you remember when we saw such extremes before the extreme 2021 heat wave?
Yeah, that was about the same period. Yeah, we were seeing it 9 or 10 days out, a general trend.
We were just like, there's no way that we're going to be that hot.
Yeah, like the numbers.
850s.
Yeah.
And I remember, this is kind of a funny, quick story. I was looking at similar graphics that you have, Mark, on your website, of this cold spell coming. And I remember some of the operational runs were pumping out negative 20 degree, 850 millibar temperatures Celsius. And I remember turning to my wife and saying, Katie, I have never seen negative 20 degree Celsius, 850 millibar temps. And she's just staring at me like into oblivion. And I'm like, to put this into context, if it's a 20 degree 850 millibar temperature in the summertime, that's like a pretty major heat wave going on. And she's like, okay.
Yeah, I get the same from my husband. And I did want to say, so when we first started seeing that, I remember, if you looked at any different models that they were all showing something. It wasn't just this
just
European
one crazy one. Yeah,
that was crazy. And so I remember I might have done a few engage posts and done a couple of this where I said that I'm like, look, here's one model run, here's another, something's coming, something's up. We just got to get closer till we can nail it down. But we had an idea. It wasn't all exact, but they all showed something. So we knew it was coming.
Here's something that's different between seeing a heat wave 8, 9, 10 days out and seeing a cold wave 8, 9, 10 days out. For us to get a heat wave, it's very straightforward. Upper level high builds overhead. How warm are those 850 millibar temps going to be up at 5,000 feet? Okay, that's about how hot we're going to be. We're probably going to have some weak offshore flow in the summer. So pretty straightforward. Whereas with a cold wave here, everything is extremely sensitive. I mean, everything has to line up just right because we have mountains blocking the coldest air most of the time. In this case, this is what actually happened. You see the, look at it, let's go back to, see how models at one point were pushing the whole upper level low, basically a chunk of the polar vortex straight south over us. And in the end, here's the European, this is more or less what happened. This is just initialized just a few days ahead of time, but this is more or less what happened. But you see how a chunk of that polar vortex did come into BC, but then it slid off to the east. It did not come straight south over us. That's why we didn't have, yes, it was extremely cold, but it could have been far colder, and the whole Pacific Northwest could have been encompassed by this massive cold wave. Probably would have been drier too. So see how just a little change there made a big difference in what actually occurred. And one last thing on that one, notice it was the perfect setup for snow or ice as you see a little wave come in from the west as the cold air comes in below. See that?
In these scenarios, I wonder if there's any way we can escape without dealing with ice at the end. I mean,
well, the GFS, remember, for 3 days ahead of time, 4 days ahead of time, the GFS kept bringing a low by to the north instead, and it had almost, at one point, the GFS had the low going by to the north, so the cold air just barely made it through the gorge, maybe a touch of freezing rain in the metro, and that was it. It was never bringing the cold air south. That was about a 3-day period. Remember how the Euro and the GM were like, okay, nope, everything's going by to the south. The cold air is coming in, and the GFS kept going by with the low to the north. Remember that for about 3 or 4 days?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I guess to rephrase and it's a rhetorical question, that much cold air spilling into our western valleys and out to the coast. I just wonder if there's a scenario in which we can escape, we can warm up without.
Yes. Oh, did I get too aggressive?
No,
Sorry.
I would love to hear. I mean, are you talking about just a strong dry southerly wind?
No, it's happened before. I just, December 2009, and maybe it was 2013, there might have been a very marginal, as we went out of the cold air. Was it 09 or 2013? Several days in the 20s and low 30s. And we just came out of it with, like, one morning it was like 26, a touch of freezing rain, and then it was 40 in the afternoon, and that was it. Yeah, just as long as a southerly breeze kicks in, we're golden. And that has happened.
And the other thing too is we had that surface low that came in with all the moisture.
Yep.
I can imagine if that hadn't been where it would have been a completely different story.
Right.
And I do wonder how much like snowpack on snow on the ground plays into that, because that obviously affects our surface temperatures.
Some.
It may affect how strong that gradient can be, a little bit, or at least how far the wind can make it, the southerly wind. So, yeah, it was impressive.
This is Friday, the day the cold air came in. It doesn't say.
What we're seeing, the observed temperatures.
This is remember we sat there in the upper, right around the daybreak. And this is the day, remember, we were really concerned. I was scared to death that day that we were going to have, as the Arctic air arrived from the north and the east, first from the north, then from the east through the gorge. That was a day we were scared, like, what if we get more precip than expected and we get 1.5 inches of precip and Portland shuts down? Remember, we were scared of that. Is that the day schools shut down midday? I think so.
Yes, that's when they sent everybody home early.
There were flurries around. There was like still a little bit of residual moisture. And Mark, your concern was the lift, the some convergence potentially leading to stronger showers than models were depicting. Yeah.
We got lucky on that. We did well. I mean, I think we said nothing to an inch, maybe. I was covering myself with an inch. I mean, we really thought every model was pretty dry. So models did excellent in many facets of this whole event. I was surprised. I would say, some would disagree, I would say this whole week, models did the best that I've ever seen. With these multiple events, they did the best that I've ever seen. And you'll see here in a moment, there's one part where I didn't pay close enough attention to the models, I don't think. Or I was in denial. So that was leading into it. By the way, if you're wondering, let's see. Here, let's go to this one. How this cold spell. If you do it by 7 days, It's the coldest since, If you just take the 7-day average, coldest since January of 2017. If you take the 5-day average temperatures of PDX, it's the coldest since 2013. Well, my light just went off.
No, you're fine. You got
Do I
plenty
look
of light.
okay? Okay.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
good.
We can still see it.
3-day average, it's the coldest since 2013. It ties with 2013, and January of 96 was slightly colder. And then if you just take the 1-day temp, which was well advertised here, Saturday the 13th, that was our coldest day since December of 1990.
Wow.
And they're the coldest. Going back to 1950 or 1940 when the airport records began. We weren't anywhere close to the top 10, 20, or 30
No.
weeks. Look at
Which
that
ranges
1950. In
that's
1950, there was
12.5
more than
degrees.
one. Yeah.
Wow. So in
Is that
1950,
12 and a half degrees?
yeah, 12.6 that's
Okay.
average 7-day period.
Yeah, how did that happen? Yes.
That's crazy. Wow.
I think there were some highs in the teens, and I think it was calm and cold with snow cover. So we had some nights down around 0, I think.
That wasn't. I recall you showed some pictures from a viewer that we aren't allowed to show because we haven't had approval from the original viewer of the frozen Columbia. People driving. across it.
Oh.
Since you asked, that would be this month. This is when people drove across the Columbia River. You like this? I
Wow.
pulled this up last night. 1930, January. So just for
Oh,
comparison,
1930. Okay.
look at
No.
those highs. I have them all highlighted. So from the 8th to the 26th, every day was at or below freezing. Many of
Oh my
those days well
gosh.
down in the 20s. 2 of those days stayed in the teens. And most
Mm.
nights were at least down below 19.
Wow.
With snow, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days. There were really like 3 snow events in there. There was snow on the ground most of the month in Portland. So cold, and that froze up the Columbia River. And there were no dams on the Columbia in 1930. Bonneville wasn't built until 33 or 38. It's one of the 38, I think. So the Columbia was colder in the winter and ran much lower.
Oh.
Last time it froze up, somebody flew an airplane, I think, underneath the interstate bridge as well. They were into all those sorts of feats back then, weren't they? So
Jeez.
unsafe.
Yeah.
They really lived it up.
Arrested for doing that right now.
Probably.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Okay, so PGE facts. We didn't have a lot of this info, and we just, like we were just barely in recovery mode last Friday, all zonked out here. So we didn't have some of these facts. PGE, look at that, 9-day event. All customers are back on by Monday the 22nd. 500,000 customers went out. Now, like me, my power was out 1 day, and then it was out for 2 days, separate events. So that counted everybody if you went out more than once. But the peak was on that Saturday the 13th, 165,000 people out. 350 power poles replaced.
Yeah. Lots of trees down, lines down, mess.
Yeah.
Katie, you haven't seen this graphic.
I haven't.
right.
I was just in awe.
Mark
there.
was working on this last night. He was super proud of himself.
Yeah.
I wanted to
That's
see how, I wanted to understand the viewer, let's say. What do I mean by that? I mean, I was saying, well, models did pretty well. What's the issue? Like, okay, yeah, we warmed it up a little bit fast. But this way, what I did here, folks, if you're listening and you can't see, I lined up all the 7-day forecasts from the day before the event, Thursday the 11th, all the way until Friday the 19th or Thursday the 18th, I guess. And I lined them up so that you could look at any one day and see how the forecast progressed over time. And then on the left side, what actually occurred at PDX. All right. So, for example, let's just take Monday. We knew we were going to be in the cold air, right? That was a pretty good forecast all along. 4 days ahead of time, we said 32, partly sunny. Then we said 32. The next day we said 30. The day after that, we said 28. It ended up being 30. Fine. And you can kind of see how as we got closer to events, then we'd throw up the first alert weather days.
Mm-hmm.
And we can be honest here on this podcast, I think, right?
Yeah.
We're all going to be honest. So I remember specifically during this event, and now I wish maybe I wouldn't have done so, but as we were leading into it, my big thing, and I've mentioned it to, I think, several of you, I don't like message confusion. Like, okay, we need to be focused on this Friday and Saturday thing. Yes, we might get precip maybe about the middle of next week, and that could be freezing rain because, it's going to be cold and precip's coming in, but I don't want message confusion. So I do remember on that Thursday, we're all excited about the big Friday, Saturday event. We're going to be frozen. I think most of our models did show some sort of showers coming back Tuesday and Wednesday with a south wind.
Mm-hmm.
maybe it wasn't Thursday. No, I'm sorry. It was Friday. So by Friday,
It was Friday.
we really should have said possible freezing rain on Tuesday. We knew that was possible later Tuesday. And I remember not blowing it off. We knew meteorologically it could happen, but I really wanted to be focused on here's what's coming up for the weekend. So we didn't put it in there. So we knew that was a possibility. I think we should have thrown it in.
Yeah.
It's something that each of these big events, I try to remember, like, okay, what would I do different next time? So you guys remind me next time that happens, say, don't be blowing it off just because, you don't want to get confused here. Just throw it in the 7-day. Maybe don't talk about it in all our big forecast notes. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, and so on that Friday, I was looking to do a story about your body temperatures and hypothermia and frostbite and all that. And I was talking with Doctor at Providence, and they said that they didn't have time to do it that day, but they could do it on Tuesday because another ice storm was coming. And so I didn't want to say, no, we're focusing this one first. We'll do that one later. We got to get through this one, before that one hits. But there were a few people that were like, we didn't know this whole thing was going to last a week. And we're helping you get through each event.
So they had heard that at that point on that Friday. Yeah. So should have thrown it in there. Jeff, you got any comments on that? You were at home.
I have experienced this with severe weather coverage, like tornado potential in the Southern Plains when I was out there in Texas for a couple of years. And I totally understand where you're coming from. You don't want to jump ahead and spend a lot of time on, an event that could be coming 5 to 7 days out when you have an event within a day or two coming. But I think I agree with you, Mark. I think it's important to put it on the 7-day if we have confidence it's coming. But we focus more of our time in our weathercasts. If we're given 3 minutes of time to present the weather in an evening newscast, maybe we spend the bulk of the time on the event coming in, and then just pepper in something could be coming later on, but at least make mention of it. I think and then there's other ways to do it on social media, but we can always look back in hindsight and say we wish we did it this way. I think you all did a really good job warning our viewers. I think there was still some uncertainty regarding that midweek ice event, and especially with such a dramatic warm up coming to a lot of the valley, it was difficult to really know how that was going to play out.
Yeah. Right. So then once we got to Saturday, to that storm, and we were that afternoon, it's like, okay, the storm has been happening. Okay, it's going to be wrapping up tonight. Then we threw it all on there and said, okay, this is going to be a transition event Tuesday. So you had 1, 2, 3. But the point is, people were like, oh, we're just going to warm up out of it Wednesday and not worry about freezing rain. So next time I'm going to remember that. So then, we got through Monday. It became obvious we had an ice storm warning. Let's see, next traffic. Oh, gosh, I have to reorient my eyes. Okay, here we are. So then, so we were still going 46 and warmer Wednesday afternoon. I got another graphic for that. And that did not happen in most of the metro, which we'll cover in a second. And by Monday, notice how the highs, let's go back. We had been going, 40s Thursday for day after day. Then I remember by Sunday, I was like, oh, Thursday rainy. I think by Sunday, we were already seeing that east wind return on Thursday. It's like, and I was kind of concerned, like, boy, if we don't wipe out the cold air, there's still a lot east of the Cascades. So by the time we get to Monday, we had rainy and chilly on Thursday and 40, which clearly implied, East Metro might have freezing rain. And by Tuesday, we're like, hey, this is a problem for later Thursday. I think we could go to freezing rain again, East Metro. So so it continued on that way. It wasn't like some of those events where we've just stayed frozen longer than expected and the whole city's locked in like 2 extra days. That wasn't really the case. I mean, we warmed up halfway and then it went back into it. And actually, let's go to the next one.
Well, and while you're doing that, I want to say real quick, that is, to me, a very good example of when we tell people anything more than 24 to 48 hours could change.
Right.
Like, it's just a prime example is because, this is what we were seeing. And then we got within that window and we're like, now everything is starting to come together where we can actually tell you a better idea, a more focused idea of what's going to happen. So.
Yeah, this is a great graphic. This was the Wharf GFS. That's the highest res we have. Oh, no, this is 4 kilometer, but the 1.33, I think, wasn't available. And you could see that southerly wind forecast to come up just about to the Columbia River. This is Wednesday at 1 p.m. And what actually happened? Well, it didn't quite get that far. It was about 5 miles short. You see those 40s briefly. Jeff, you briefly probably were close to 40. Nah, you were kind of on the edge. You must have been close to 40 at your place in Southwest Portland. But then it cooled off the second part of the day, right? As the south wind went away.
Yeah, and it was tough because we had such a weird layer of like snow and ice. It was difficult to get out of it.
And the east wind went away. Look how I remember this later in the day. Corbett jumped to 41 and went calm. That was an unusual situation in that we actually lost the cold air supply, and then cool air just kind of sat in the middle of the Portland area in Vancouver. So, yeah, so that was not correct. That was one big mess up by the models was the southerlies didn't punch all the way through. That said, they never showed them punching much farther north of the Columbia River, so we knew it was going to be marginal. And then what was this? This was the models did really well on the second ice storm, but this is one where I think I messed up a little. I felt in my forecasting that this was the graph on Thursday morning as the precip had already arrived. It showed the same thing for like 24 hours or more beforehand, showing us creeping down to right around freezing while all this precipitation is coming in on Thursday, the big ice storm, East Metro. And sure, I mean, if we would have followed that directly, that's freezing rain. So, yeah. So it handled the sloshing back into the cold air really well. Look at those winds, east 30, gust 40 something.
Yeah, that was... I know where you're coming from. I don't think you messed up, Mark. But I know where you said you were focused on the East Metro, and it did affect Central Metro and parts of the West Metro. Is that where you're kind of getting at?
Yeah, that's, you know what? It was, and another note I have, it was 2 to 4 degrees off. I mean, that made all the difference.
That does.
If it all would have been 2 or 3 degrees warmer, we would have talked about only east of I-205, maybe the very top of the West Hills.
Well,
Yeah.
Really quick, from my perspective, because I wasn't working, that part of the forecast right there, that part of the event was when I lost power the longest, and I was in Southwest Portland. We lost it for 13 hours, and I know I'm part of a Multnomah Village Facebook group, and tons of people lost power in that part of the event, even though it wasn't necessarily the worst icing that we saw.
Thick ice glazing. Yeah, and so it is important to remember that, like we saw in that Salem temperature trace, that after Wednesday morning, the vast majority of areas west of the Cascades never saw frozen precipitation again. And that was it. So for Salem, it was just, and most of the valley, also up to Kelso, most of Clark County, it was about the Saturday event, the cold, and then a brief transition Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. That was it. But the big ice storm, yeah, East Metro, so much trouble with that, all those outages. Camilla and it was Camilla. We were sitting there looking at the sky cams that night, and it was just like lightning off to the east. You could see the flashes,
crazy.
Power lines arcing and whatnot.
The amount of viewers that
exploding.
The amount of viewers that thought there were thunderstorms out there was kind of mind-boggling to me.
I'd never seen that before. That was crazy.
And transformers don't explode.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, clarify that, because actually that's an interesting little tidbit.
Everybody says that. They can explode, but it's extremely rare. I have a lineman neighbor. He's older, retired. But one time when I said that, he goes, "Oh, I hate it when people say that." It's either the fuses popping, which makes the exploding sound, or when you just see the flashing going on. It could be a power line arcing with a branch or something. But if a transformer exploded, that means there would be toxic oil spread all over that street. That doesn't happen. That's extremely rare. So transformers do, what would you call it? Like fuses blow. What was the wording? On the air, they said.
Like spark?
No, there was another word. It wasn't exploding. It was transformers, blow. I guess you could say blow because a fuse blows.
Huh.
Whatever.
Or fails. I don't know.
Yeah. Either way, the transformers are not exploding all over the East Metro area.
Yeah.
Everybody says it, though. Like ATM machine.
This is off topic a little bit, but the airlines have been referring to the door coming out as a blowout, and I can't stop thinking about diaper blowouts.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
unfortunate.
unfortunate.
You know what those are.
I do. I know very
sure
well.
do.
All right, let's talk about snowpack. Okay, so this was January 1st. Boy, abysmal snowpack at the start of the month.
Just awful.
A lot of complaints from the skiers and snowboarders, probably the ski resorts too. But boy, what a drastic change. Mark, you want to jump to the 25th, which was yesterday when we were recording this podcast.
Boom.
And boy, we are in really good shape now.
Right back to normal if you average the state, right? Look at that.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
It's too bad we've got all this mild, wet weather coming up.
Speaking of.
Yeah. Dang
Good
it.
transition, Camilla.
I will say, luckily, it's not a long stretch of mild, wet weather. It's only going to be,
True.
a handful of days. So,
Yeah.
It's only going to be, 2 to 4 inches of rain on top of that snowpack. Not much.
We have a lot to work with, though, so we won't lose it all.
Yeah.
True.
I'm trying to be an optimist here.
It'll come.
So-
Actually, a large snowpack does absorb like a sponge. It just raises the snow water content.
The Cascade concrete is coming.
Yes.
folks.
Yes.
So I pulled 6 images we're going to show you right here, and we're going to kind of go back and forth between the European Ensemble outlook and the GFS Ensemble outlook. So this gives us a rough idea of what we're going to be looking at temperature-wise for the next, couple of weeks or so. And if you're not watching this, if you're just kind of listening to our podcast, between the weekend and early next week, temperatures are going to be bumping up into the mid 50s to low 60s. And this is going to translate to high snow levels. And that's what Mark alluded to, is a lot of rain falling on the snowpack. I think our snow level could rise as high as 8,000 to 9,000 feet or so, which is going to be kind of rough considering how awesome the snow is right now. I'm listening to Bonnie Silkman, who's been up there at Timberline recently. She said the snow is great. So, but by mid to late week of next week, we are going to be dipping back down into a stretch of weather with highs in the 40s, overnight lows in the 30s in the lowlands. Rough estimate. This is the European outlook, and I just want to if we can jump to the GFS Ensemble outlook, very similar. I mean, they're pretty much in lockstep here.
Basically, we're going back to average once we hit February 1st. Nice timing.
Let's jump to the next graphic, Mark, which
I have some more. No, we can do yours, and then I have a couple. Oh, when we ready to talk about how warm is it going to be?
Yeah, we could. Well, we could do that first, and then we can. Well, I was just going to show the next 4 graphics that I have.
Let's do this.
I'm going to talk about precipitation outlook, and then any possibility of wintry mischief in the lowlands west of the Cascades. So I highlighted that section with those red bars to kind of show that once we start to cool back down after this handful of days of wet and mild conditions, it looks like this is going to be kind of a cool, dry stretch. I mean, there's really not a lot of precipitation in the long-range outlook as we kick off the month of February. So that's the European outlook. Those bars are between about the 3rd or 4th of February all the way to maybe the 10th or the 11th.
Next weekend, the following weekend, the first weekend of February, it looks like 3rd and 4th.
The GFS Ensemble outlook is very similar. So again, once we get into this cooler stretch, it should be much drier. Hopefully we'll get some breaks in the rain and we can get outdoors and whatnot.
And more of the action's heading towards California, which is good for them.
El Nino-like. Let's take a look at the next one.
Oh, I got one for you. Okay, let's see. Oh. Okay, go ahead.
Let's do this really quick. I wrote in text on here, there are 50 European Ensemble members.
Nice.
And around February 4th, 13 of 50, which is far less than half of the Ensemble members, are hinting at maybe some wintry mischief west of the Cascades. If I'm looking at this, I just glance at this every day, I'm thinking not too concerned. Right? Not
over
too
the diaper changes. You look at this every day.
Yeah, like right hand has a diaper in the hand, left hand has my cell phone. All right. The next one is the GFS Ensemble outlook. There are 30 Ensemble members. There are 50 European. There are 30 Ensemble members for the GFS. And around February 3rd, a day before the last graphic, there are 8 out of 30 Ensemble members hinting at a dusting or a minor amount of snow. Long story short, folks, we're really not seeing any major signs of wintry weather returning west of the Cascades. So that's that. Mark has some animations.
Yeah, I have something to add. And Jeff, you noticed this somewhat while you were off as well. We sure noticed it. Remember in the week before the big cold blast, we had some marginal snow, a couple marginal snow events where we got kind of excited. The European, for whatever reason, this year is especially bad. It's almost like the algorithm has been set to when we have like 38 degrees and mixed rain and snow, it accumulates that snow on its maps. Folks, I know there's a lot of weather geeks that are listening and watching this podcast. Those snow maps were absolutely terrible. Like the European, especially, it's like the threshold is set too high. There were many days where I'm like, the low is going to be 37 and it's producing 0.4 inches of snow. So the little stuff I ignore.
Together.
What was that?
We were looking at those together, and we had that conversation. We were like, there showed like several inches in Salem, and we were like, what?
So watch out on the snow maps. And that would also apply to this one. I know this isn't always true, guys. Like, what if we're well below freezing and we have 1.5 inches of snow coming? Fine. But in these marginal events, I pretty much watch the blue, which is 2 inches or higher. It's like, okay, it actually produces something significant on the blue one. So just something to remember as we go through this marginal type stuff. I do have. Why are there lines in here? Why are Jeff's lines in? Oh, because I copy pasted. Ignore the red lines because I copy pasted a graphic and then threw in, because every podcast needs to have a 500 millibar graphic
Animation. Yeah.
This is an animation of a week and a half. No, is it 10 days? Yeah, 10 days of the Euro from last night's run. A lot of ridging over the west. Then a trough comes in the middle of next week. That's the cooler stuff Jeff was referencing. But boy, at the end, yeah, there may be cool air left down below, but we're still in kind of this weird splitty or ridgy thing. I mean, there's still ridging around. So I just feel like we've re-entered the December pattern again.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have one more.
Enjoy the snow while it's there because we have low confidence that it's going to really boost back up.
Yeah. So we were having a debate last night in the Weather Center, Camilla and I. How warm could it get Sunday and Monday? And we're like, ooh, Jeff raised those temps. And I see now you've got a low 60 for Sunday.
I do, and you know what? There could be another. I'll let you take it away.
Well, the biggie is, we still have snow-covered terrain east of the Cascades. If we get an easterly breeze at PDX, that'd probably keep us in the 50s. But all it has to do is go light south, and we agree. I mean, look at this wharf. This is this morning's wharf GFS run, 4 kilometer. This is for Monday. Look at all the reds, and actually Sunday was similar, but not as warm in the Cascade foothills. Look at this. It thinks, and actually it has a pretty good track record. It thinks it could be as high as 68 around Sandy, Boring, and like Malala areas on Monday if we're dry. I mean, that is possible. Unusual, but I mean, it's a very warm atmosphere overhead. If the southerly wind makes it, yes. But notice how it's producing those temps probably around 60, 64, 60, low 60s in Portland, even with an easterly breeze. So that seems unlikely. But
do you guys remember what happened on December 4th?
Oh, no. It was warm, but it was 67, right?
You are correct, Mark. Nailed it.
Well, I didn't know. I just assumed you were referencing that day. But was it southerly wind with an atmospheric river, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And do you remember what the 850 millibar temp was?
Between 5 and 20? I don't know.
I was just curious.
No.
I was curious how similar.
I
don't know.
Honestly, it didn't look as similar this morning, but now that Mark's kind of bringing up some other factors, it's feeling a bit more similar. So,
wow,
wasn't that record too? That December temperature, that was a record.
Yeah,
it was 67. And I know the January record. I've mentioned this before, 66 degrees because I remember the day it happened. Oh my gosh! Actually, the day that happened in January of I think 06. We had an atmospheric river. It lifted slightly north, a little bit different than this, but lifted slightly north, and we had partly cloudy skies all day and sunshine and southerly wind, and it made it to 66.
Wow.
Okay, does that not sound like Sunday afternoon?
Or Monday. One of the two.
Sunday afternoon looks like it could break out into sunshine. Some of the latest high
See, Mark thinks it's going to be drizzly all day on Sunday. We were fighting about this last night. I'm like, Jeff agrees with me. That precip is...
The updated graph model, Mark, I was like, holy smokes, we break out into sunshine Sunday afternoon.
Yes, let's go bike rides.
I was seeing
Camilla, she's wish casting because she wants to ride her bike. We talked about that
I'll admit it. I'll admit it.
Okay, well, that's good to know. So it breaks out some, wow, you're right. I totally agree, Jeff. We are close. What is it, the end of January? If it was 2 weeks from now, February 10th, I'd be like, wow, that's going to push us well into the 60s. But it could happen. Maybe southerly breeze. I'm not saying no, it's not going to happen. I'm saying it's definitely possible.
This was a perfect example, by the way, of weather short-term memory loss. I was thinking to myself, we have a 60 plus in the 7 day. When was the last time that happened? Let's look at the stats.
Yeah.
About a month ago.
Yeah.
Exactly. So what if we hit a 67 and that'd be cool if we hit 67, we'd have the warmest January and the warmest December day.
I mean, it wouldn't be cool.
Yeah.
That would be the coldest January day in a long time and the warmest January day in a long time.
That's weather whiplash for you.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, let's go for it. I don't know how our timing is going, Jeff. I don't have the timer on, but do we need to move on?
45 minutes right now.
Oh my gosh. Okay, longest ever.
We're all back. The gang's back together.
My wife is mad at me right now.
Get off the internet. Okay, so let's talk about the Great Cascadia Quake. Okay.
Ooh.
So 324 years ago tonight was the last Great Cascadia quake. Most likely 9 or 9.2 according to geologists. Happened offshore. And they know it was about 9 p.m. or so. Isn't that crazy?
You're missing You're missing the flashlight under your chin, Mark.
Yeah. No, so I just think this is fascinating because every time I tell this story, I just think it's fascinating. So we have this Cascadia subduction zone just offshore. That's where the Juan de Fuca plate is diving under the plate that we live on. We live on the North American plate. So basically there's land moving, many thousands of feet underneath us. But these plates get locked up on each other, just like they do in other places in the world, like off the coast of Japan, the big Japanese earthquake. And they've been locked up for 324 years.
Oh my gosh.
So at some point, it's going to happen again. So how do they know it happened in the late evening? How do they know it happened? Because three ways. And it's interesting. They didn't really, scientists didn't put this together until around, I think it was around 2000, the year 2000. Three really fascinating ones. Well, first, number three there, Native Americans had always told legends of a great wave after the ground shook on a cold winter night. And then a great wave wiped away lots of Indian villages. I think not only along the coastline there in Washington, but also maybe in the Strait of Juan de Fuca as well. So there were always these legends. At some point in the past, there was this great wave on a cold winter night, not in the summer. And then Japanese have always kept tsunami records, real detailed records for, I think, like maybe hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yes.
And they always had this one tsunami. I think they called it the orphan tsunami, that the next day, January 27th, appeared off the coast of Japan and caused a lot of damage. And they never knew where it came from because the ground never shook. So where did that come from? Okay, well, that's interesting. So I guess scientists at that point, putting that, would say, okay, there was a great earthquake somewhere in the Pacific, but who knows where, right? So then around 2000, and you can find this online, scientists were studying the submerged forests on the coast. One is, if you go to Nestucca on the Oregon coast, there's still, when the tide is low, you see trees sticking out. But more important, up on the Washington coast in Willapa Bay, there are still old cedars, and cedar wood is very, tough. It lasts a long time. And there are old cedar forests that are like under 2 feet. I think it's under 2 feet of muck. And then, they're underwater, or they're in the water, I should say. And get this. When someone studied the growth rings on those, the last growing season was the year 1699.
It's crazy stuff. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. So they knew it was sometime between the summer of 1699 and the summer of 1700. So he put all that together, figured it out, and said, this must have been the Great Cascadia Quake.
Yeah.
It's because if you think about it, let's see, I don't have a good graphic. I can use my hands. But how does it work? So if we've got the one plate shoving under the quake, the plate that we live on, so it's constantly going like this, all the stress is building up, and what will happen? It'll happen again. It'll suddenly pop, and so on the coast, the land drops like 2 feet.
Yeah.
So basically, the coast is slowly rising right now as it's being pushed up, and it'll drop like 2 or 4 feet. It'd be great actually to get a geologist on here. They could describe it in much better detail than I can. But
that would be
I might be able to do something about that.
Yeah.
If you really
so
want
not
me to.
only that would be great, because not only does a big wave come in, a tsunami, because the land has been lifted up well offshore, underneath the water. Not only does a tsunami come in, the coast actually drops a couple feet when this happens. So that amplifies the issue, amplifies the flooding of the water that comes in. So pretty interesting stuff, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And that's your story.
I'm not going to shame everybody, but I'm just going to take a poll. And I bet you that people that are listening are probably going to be able to relate to this. Who has an earthquake kit prepared?
Oh.
Actually, I would say, well, okay. So when I went through MSU, we actually had to do a bunch of this stuff, even if you weren't in like a tornado zone or anything like that. We all had to come up with them and take pictures of them and submit them for some of our assignments. Mm-hmm. So we do have food and flashlights and, safe spots and all that kind of stuff that we set up with our kids. But it's only because I had to do it for class. So
I had to also do that for class, but I promptly took it apart.
Yeah, mine too.
I have I define earthquake kit because living out of the country, I do have a water, one of those filter things where I can go down to the creek and make water. And we have a very pure creek near us. So that's just sitting in the box ready to go. So I guess I have water, we have a generator for power,
Do you have canned food?
Yeah,
Or,
I mean, yeah.
food that won't go bad for multiple days. Do you have first aid?
Oh, my wife is a nurse. She carries like 3 different
helps.
first aid kits. So that,
All
so
right,
I
so-
guess in a way we have a kit. We don't have an official kit, but we have
Mark
the
by
stuff. I
default.
can make it a week. Yeah.
I think, and I have a partial kit together, but I don't have a full one. But I think this is a good reminder. And anytime that I feel shame saying this, but anytime we do have an earthquake story or anything related to geology on a newscast, I always try to remind our viewers. Today is a great day to get your earthquake kit prepared. And I think it's really important to have it all in one place, because say something does go wrong with your home, like if something comes down the roof or what have you, or you can't access a certain part of your home, at least you know it's all together in one place. So some necessities: first aid, water supply for your family for multiple days in case something ruptures with the pipes, food that won't go bad for multiple days at a time. I'm sure there are resources online that you can search to, look that kind of stuff up. Go ahead, Mark.
Yep.
One last quick item. What's the return interval for these quakes? That's a big one. So will one happen soon or not? I think the return interval for these great Cascadia quakes is something like they've gone back. They can see them farther back than that. It's between, I think, 200 and 800 years. So as I said once on the air, I remember I said this to Shauna Parsons when she was anchoring once. I said, we could have one tonight. And she went like that. I said, or it might be 600 years away or 500 years away. We don't know.
Just don't know.
So I think the geologists have said I think they said a 30% chance of it happening in the next 50 years, which is for a geologic event, that's pretty high.
Yeah, that's a concerning percentage.
Okay. That's
a good 3-point percentage, by the way.
I have one more item. We have a radio that has batteries in it, but it also has a gear. And so it's an AM, FM. And so you wind it up to give it the energy so that you can tune in and listen to the radio so that you don't have to use batteries on it. And it's also a flashlight. So
the flashlight is key. Katie, you brought that up earlier. I think that's something necessary for your kid as well.
This one, you wind it so you don't have to worry about batteries. So you can wind it for your light. You can wind it to listen to the radio and be connected. So we have 2 of those and on different floors
for emergency
of the house.
broadcasts too.
For emergencies.
I think we sit here and we rely so much on our phones, but we've learned with some of the local power outages lately that they just, at times they just are useless getting a hold of people. So now's a good time to get your earthquake kit prepared. I'm just going to say it right now. Guys, it was a pleasure joining you again on the Fox 12 Weather Podcast.
Yeah, this was fun. We missed you.
Missed you guys too. We did. Air hug. And this was a really long one too, so hope you made it all the way through. We're going to try to do this weekly for you. Enjoy the mild stretch of weather and stay dry out there, and we'll talk to you soon. Happy Friday.
So stop your waiting and hesitating and tell us, please tell us